In 1961, a volcano woke up in the backyard of one of the most isolated towns on Earth, and every single person who lived there had to run. The entire population, around 260 people, left everything behind. Their homes, their animals, their whole world. They climbed onto small boats, sailed away across the empty South Atlantic, and were carried, eventually, all the way to England. And then something strange happened. Given the chance to start over anywhere, in a country with roads, hospitals, electricity, shops on every corner, almost all of them said no. They wanted to go back to the volcano, back to a speck of rock 1,500 miles from the nearest neighbor, where a ship comes only a handful of times a year. To understand why anyone would choose that, you have to understand the strangest, loneliest inhabited place on the planet. Find the middle of the South Atlantic Ocean, the huge, empty blue between South America and Africa, and you'll find almost nothing. Virtually no islands, no shipping lanes, just water in every direction for thousands of miles. And then, alone in all of that, there's a single volcanic island. This is Tristan da Cunha, and it is, officially, the most remote inhabited island group on Earth. How remote? Its nearest neighbor is the island of St. Helena, and that's about 1,500 miles away. The nearest continent, South Africa, is roughly 1,700 miles in the other direction. To put that in perspective, you are further from help out here than astronauts on the space station are from the ground. And there is no airport. There's nowhere flat enough to build one. The island is basically one giant volcano rising straight out of the sea, so there are no flights, no quick way in and no quick way out. The only way to reach Tristan da Cunha is by boat, a voyage of around 6 days from Cape Town, on a ship that makes the trip only about 8 to 10 times a year. Miss the boat, and you might be waiting months for the next one. Everyone on Tristan lives in a single village, not a main town with outlying suburbs. One village, and that's it. It has a wonderfully grand name for such a tiny place, Edinburgh of the Seven Seas, though the locals just call it the settlement. Around 240 people live here, fewer than 250, and the number shifts a little every time a ship arrives or leaves. And here's the detail that tells you just how tight-knit this place is. Almost everyone shares one of only 7 family surnames: Glass, Green, Swain, Rogers, Repetto, Lavarello, Hagen. 7 families, descended from the handful of settlers and shipwrecked sailors who washed up here across 2 centuries, and from them, an entire community. Life here runs on one of everything: one shop, one school, one hospital, one cafe, one police officer, and one pub, the Albatross Bar, which, fittingly, is said to be the most remote bar anywhere in the world. The island's food is grown out in a patchwork of plots called the Potato Patches, a few miles from the houses, reached by the island's one and only road, which the islanders jokingly nicknamed the M1, after Britain's busiest motorway. A motorway with, on most days, no traffic at all. So how does anyone come to live in a place like this? It starts in 1816. Britain, worried that someone might use the empty island as a base to rescue Napoleon, who was imprisoned on St. Helena, 1,500 miles north, sent a small garrison to occupy Tristan da Cunha. When the soldiers left the next year, one of them refused to go. A Scotsman named William Glass stayed behind with his family, and a couple of others joined him. They agreed to build a little community here and, remarkably, to share everything equally. That was the founding rule of Tristan. No one would be in charge, no one would get rich off anyone else. Over the following decades, the community grew in the strangest ways. Shipwrecked sailors stranded on the rocks, whalers who decided to stay, a few women brought from St. Helena so the settlement could survive, 2 Italian men whose ship went down nearby in the 1890s, Repetto and Lavarello, who never left. And that's where those 7 surnames come from. That founding idea, share everything, let no one get ahead,
is still the law of the island today. All the land is owned in common. You cannot buy a plot here. An outsider cannot simply move in. And the number of animals each family can keep is strictly limited, not for the environment alone, but so that no single family can grow wealthier and more powerful than its neighbors. It is, in a very real sense, one of the last truly equal communities on Earth.
For nearly a century and a half, the volcano at the island's heart, Queen Mary's Peak, more than 2,000 meters of it, slept. The islanders farmed their patches, fished their waters, and assumed, as their parents and grandparents had, that the mountain was simply the shape of home. Then, in 1961, the ground began to shake. Cracks opened. A vent tore through the earth right beside the settlement, and a dome of lava started to rise, pushing up directly behind the village, between the houses and the sea. There was no fire brigade, no army to call, no airport to fly anyone out. Just a few hundred people, a handful of small boats, and a mountain coming back to life beneath their homes. So they ran. The entire island evacuated. They rowed out to fishing boats, transferred to a passing ship, reached Cape Town, and from there they were taken all the way to England. The whole population of the loneliest place on Earth suddenly deposited into 1960s Britain. Traffic, television, crowds, money, winter. They were housed together at a former Royal Air Force base called Calshot, near Southampton. For the first time in their lives, most of them saw trains and cinemas and streets full of strangers. The world had, in an instant, rushed in. Britain expected them to stay. Why wouldn't they? They'd been rescued from a volcanic island in the middle of nowhere and given a life in a modern country. Jobs, schools, doctors, everything Tristan didn't have. But the islanders were miserable. They found Britain crowded, cold, and full of things they didn't want. Crime, money worries, illness they'd never known. They missed the silence. They missed the sea. They missed a place where you knew by name every single person you would ever meet. So they held a vote. And it wasn't close. Almost the entire community chose to return to Tristan da Cunha, to the volcano that had driven them out. Only a tiny handful voted to stay in England. In 1963, most of them sailed home. They found the eruption had spared the village, though the lava had buried the little fish canning factory that had been their main link to the outside economy. And they began, patiently, to rebuild. Today, when a ship from Tristan comes into dock, it ties up at a small harbor the islanders built with their own hands. And they named it Calshot Harbor, after the base in England where they once waited out their exile. A quiet reminder, right at the water's edge, of the 2 years the world came to Tristan, and the moment they chose to turn their backs on it and go home. Tristan da Cunha is still out there, still going. It's a British overseas territory, part of a scattered nation officially called St. Helena, Ascension, and Tristan da Cunha, run day to day by an island council the residents elect themselves. They still make their living the way they long have, chiefly from a prized local lobster, the Tristan rock lobster, caught in the cold waters around the island and shipped to restaurants a world away. And, wonderfully, from stamps. Collectors around the globe pay for the postage of the world's most remote post office. The volcano, for the record, is not finished. Its last eruption on the island was that one in 1961, but a small underwater eruption rumbled offshore as recently as 2004. The islanders live, as they always have, on a mountain that is only sleeping. And in 2020, they did something extraordinary for such a tiny community. They protected almost all of the vast ocean around them, an area of nearly 700,000 square kilometers, creating one of the largest marine sanctuaries on the planet. The loneliest people on Earth, quietly guarding one of its wildest stretches of sea. We tend to think of remoteness as something to escape, a problem to be solved with a runway and a signal bar. Tristan da Cunha is the opposite. It's a place where people were handed the whole modern world on a plate and chose, almost to a person, to give it back. Because what they had out there in the empty Atlantic wasn't just an island. It was a place where no one is a stranger, no one gets left behind, and no one gets to tower over anyone else. A place small enough that it still belongs to everyone who lives on it. Maybe that's worth more than a road to the nearest city. Maybe, for a couple hundred people at the edge of the map, it's worth more than everything. Some places at the edge of the map are the ones people refuse to leave. Next time, the opposite. A town people were forced to abandon, where the ground itself caught fire and has been burning underground for more than 60 years. The town of Centralia. We'll see you at the next margin of the map.